I woke up this morning to an interesting comment from a theist on a comment that I'd left on Ray Comfort's YouTube channel about 8 months ago. I tried responding. Unfortunately, I appear to be shadow banned by YouTube right now on that account. I guess this is what you get for arguing with flat earthers and creationists all the time. Anyway, Andrea said, I saw your other comment about asking God to show himself to you for years and that he did not. I'm happy to have the discussion with you that other person wouldn't. I don't think atheists are lying when they say they don't believe in God. Some, like you, are incredibly intelligent people who have not seen evidence of a God. Let's talk about what is and is not evidence of a God creating the world. I do look at everything around me and see evidence of God's character in creation. I only started seeing this after getting to know his character from reading the Bible. Tell me what it's like for you when you take in everything around you. It's hard when writing to make sure things sound right. I am curious and genuinely asking. So, when I look around at the world, I see atoms, I see quantum fields, I see chemistry doing what chemistry does, weird chemistry, Daisy's chemistry. Like, everything seems to follow fairly regular behaviors. And I think that's because things have properties. And so things will act in alignment with whatever their properties dictate. Like, you got a hydrogen atom and an oxygen atom. They bump into each other, and they're going to react. That's how that works. I don't think any of it requires any sort of intelligence or a mind or anything supernatural like that. Like, as for what evidence is, I'm glad you brought that up, and this is a really good way to start a conversation. I take evidence to be basically what you would expect under a given hypothesis versus another hypothesis. A definition I like to use is a fact which indicates, where a fact refers to any objectively verifiable piece of data. So, for example, the temperature of the cosmic microwave background radiation. We've measured that with like 3 or 4 different satellites, refining the measurements over time. They all approach a certain value, like all the measurements agree with each other. So we've got objective verification that there's this piece of data. There's photons of a particular energy and a particular wavelength that we see in every direction in the universe. It's the furthest light we can see, basically. So that's a piece of data, and it becomes evidence for something like the Big Bang, because it's a piece of data that indicates that particular hypothesis. Like, in this case, there were predictions made decades in advance of exactly what that light would look like, and then taking into consideration that prediction plus the Hubble-Lemaitre law after we discovered that the universe was expanding and how fast it was expanding, we were able to predict exactly what the light would look like to us. And these predictions were made before humans ever had the technology to detect microwaves. But it turns out, due to expansion of the universe, that the CMB, which was originally in the infrared spectrum, were like close to orange in color, like near the red end of the visible spectrum going into the infrared. Due to expansion of space-time, that light has been redshifted until nowadays it's in the microwave spectrum. And lo and behold, we look around and, plug the numbers in, and we've got microwave light that, when you do the redshift calculations, would have originally been orange to infrared. And the specific temperature of it is within like 1/10,000th of a Kelvin, or even more precise than that, to the predicted value. So that's a good example of something that I consider evidence. It's a piece of data that anybody can objectively verify, that's not subject to personal interpretation. And specifically, it's data which indicates a specific hypothesis over competing hypotheses. So when we think about evidence of a God creating a universe, what exactly would that look like? Like, what kind of predictions would you have? What would you expect to see in a universe if a God created it? If it's the Christian God, supposedly all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, classic omni traits, then I would expect to see a lot less needless suffering in the world. Like, I've heard the apologetic for suffering related to free will, original sin, all that. But that doesn't really say anything about earthquakes or, like, animal suffering. Surely animals didn't sin, right? Yet they suffer. So I don't think a good God could create a system. I don't think a good omnipotent God could create a system in which there's suffering that doesn't lead to some greater good, right? But like, what would evidence look like if a God were to have created the universe? I look around, I'm not aware of anything that's not, at least in principle, explainable entirely naturalistically. Just a little bit about me. My educational background is in physics and computer science. I didn't get a degree. I dropped out of college for reasons having more to do with family stuff than academics. And I'm a poor boy in Mississippi, so I never really went back after my scholarships expired when I was out of school. But I've kept studying. Like, it's kind of just been like my lifelong passion. I just always wanted to know how stuff works. And every time somebody would explain to me how something works, I'm like, but how does that part work? As far as I can tell, there's no magic or anything to the universe. The universe just kind of is. There's a few things I could point to as evidence for why I specifically think the universe isn't created. Like, I could point you to the quantum eternity theorem that Sean Carroll devised. Basically, it's a direct derivation of the Schrödinger equation, the fundamental equation in quantum mechanics. And I'll save you the math, but basically what it means is that as long as the Hamiltonian of the universal wave function, that is the total energy of the system, is a non-zero value, then the system must exist in perpetuity. So that would indicate that the universe could never have been created, that it must be eternal. But yeah, in general, that's my basic thoughts on what evidence is, how it's applied. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on what you see that you consider evidence for a God creating the universe. And yeah, stupid YouTube just hiding all my comments. So I figured I'd give you a video response instead. Thanks.